Last but not least, Shelley Winters speaks out about Marilyn Monroe. Her name is Shirley Shrift, and she was born on August 18, 1920 in St. Louis, Missouri. When she was a child, her family moved to Brooklyn, New York, where she grew up. Her dad was a tailor, and her mom was a singer, which may have shown how Shell would eventually mix toughness and beauty. In spite of coming from a simple home, she was determined from a young age to break free. "I was never going to be a secretary or a nice girl who waited for things to happen," she said one time. "I was going to make them happen." That determination shaped her whole life, at work and in her home life. As a child, Winters worked as a model and chorus girl in the 1930s. She then moved up to stage and radio before making her film appearance in the early 1940s. In the beginning, Hollywood saw her as just another pretty blonde. She was determined to avoid that part. Over the course of several years, she studied acting at Lee Strasberg's studio in New York. There, she improved her skills and gained the emotional depth that would later define her film presence. She had small parts in early movies like What a Woman, 1943, and A Double Life, 1947. However, it wasn't until the 1950s that Shelley Winters became known as a serious actor who could play difficult parts. In 1951, George Stevens' A Place in the Sun was her big break. She played Alice Tripp, a working-class factory girl, whose sad relationship with Montgomery Clift's character showed how deeply Shell felt. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for the role, and it changed how people saw her in Hollywood. Winters was no longer seen as a pretty starlet after that. Instead, she was seen as a powerful actor who could play real women who were often having problems. She showed how talented she was in movies like The Night of the Hunter, 1955, The Diary of Anne Frank, 1959, and Lolita, 1962, where she gave parts that might have been one-dimensional more depth and humanity. As the desperate Mrs. Van Dawn in The Diary of Anne Frank, Winters got her first Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. It was a performance that was both tense and heartbreakingly vulnerable. 10 years later, in 1965, for A Patch of Blue, she won her second Academy Award for her part as the mean and racist mother of a blind girl. This role showed how brave she was in dealing with dark and uncomfortable topics. Shelley Winters never shied away from roles that showed flaws in people or looked into social problems. The people she wrote about were not always pretty, glamorous, or likable, but they were always very real. She became known for being honest, which made her one of the most respected character actors in movie history. In addition to being an actress, Shelley Winters was known for being brave and having a very sharp sense of humor. She wasn't afraid to say what she thought in interviews, and her honest, sometimes rude opinions made her famous. In a Hollywood world that values youth and beauty, she went against the norm by aging on her own terms and working well into her later years. Her work was full of new starts. She brought the same fire and authenticity to every role, whether it was a brash mother in Alfie 1966 or a scared passenger in The Poseidon Adventure 1972. In the 1980s and 1990s, she made memorable TV appearances. Winters was just as interesting in her personal life. She was married 4 times, and one of them was to the Italian singer Vittorio Gassman. They had a daughter together named Victoria. People were interested in her love life because she was said to have dated many famous men, such as Marlon Brando and Shaq Connery. But behind the newspaper stories was a woman with a lot of intelligence and kindness. She fought for civil rights, women, and social justice in politics long before it was cool to do so in Hollywood. Her 2 autobiographies, Shelley, also known as Shirley 1980, and Shelley II, The Middle of My Century, 1989, were interesting because they showed her true feelings about fame, love, and the problems women in the entertainment business face. Shelley Winters had a long and varied playing career, and her personal life was just as exciting and full of changes. She was married several times, which showed how passionate and often impulsive she was. There were many different sides to her personality that came out in each of her marriages. They showed how much she wanted stability, how independent she was, and how she was always looking for a meaningful link in the glamorous but unstable world of Hollywood. She married MP Paul Mayer for the first time in 1943, when she was just starting out in the show business and still getting used to things. They got married while the world was in the middle of World War II. Mayer was a captain in the U.S. Army. Shelley badly wanted a sense of security and normalcy when she was young and trying to balance her ambition with her emotional stability. This marriage gave her both, but the stresses of being apart during the war and her growing desire to work in Hollywood started to push them apart. While Mayer was away on long-term military duty, Shelley was quickly rising in her career by going to tryouts and immersing herself in the world of acting. The stress on their relationship was too much, and by 1948, they were no longer married. Shelley often talked about how much she respected Mayer, even though they were never married. She said that their marriage had taught her a lot about love and dedication. Shelley got married for the second time in 1952, this time to the famous Italian singer Vittorio Gassman. It was a quick romance that started when they worked together on stage and felt creatively and emotionally connected right away. Gassman was already a big name in European movies, thanks to his background in classical theater and striking good looks. Shelley was enthralled by his artistic fire and intelligence. Together, they had a daughter in 1953, Victoria Gassman, who became the most important person in Shelley's life. But there were problems in the marriage because of differences in culture and competition at work. Vittorio's traditional Italian personality often clashed with Shelley's open American personality. Both artists had strong personalities and busy schedules that kept them apart a lot of the time. Because of the problems between Hollywood and Rome and their bad tempers, they split up in 1954, only 2 years after getting married. Even though she had been hurt, Shelley was still proud of her daughter and often talked about how she was one of her proudest achievements. Anthony Franciosa was one of the brightest young stars in Hollywood at the time she married him in 1957. It was Shelley's third marriage. Franciosa was good-looking, charming and talented, and at first glance, the two seemed like the right match, two ambitious performers with a lot of experience in the business. They quickly became one of the most talked-about couples in Hollywood. They were seen at fancy parties and in news magazines. But behind the shiny exterior, their relationship was full of emotional ups and downs. Shelley and Anthony both had short tempers and strong personalities that often fought. Shelley's career started to fade behind Franciosa's, which was hard for her because she had worked hard to get where she was in Hollywood. Their fights often got out in public, which made tabloid stories. In the end, the marriage ended in 1960 after only 3 years. But Shelley and Anthony stayed in touch professionally for years afterward. Shelley later thought that their relationship had had too much fire and not enough peace. She understood that their shared passion was both what brought them together and what broke them apart. Shelley's last and most shocking marriage was to Jerry DeFord, whom she married in 2006, just a few months before she died. They had been together for a long time. This marriage was very different from the one she had before. It was marked less by the wild passion of youth and more by deep love and friendship. She had been with Jerry for almost 20 years. He was a steady and loyal figure for her as her health started to get worse. They lived together in peace, away from the busy streets of Hollywood. Shelley had been looking for peace all her life, and their relationship gave her it. Their marriage was recognized by the government not long before she died. It was a final act of love, and thanks to the guy who had been by her side during her last days. A lot of people have been interested in, guessed about, and made up stories about Shelley Winters and Marilyn Monroe's friendship for decades. In Hollywood's golden age, both women became major stars. But they were connected in a lot more ways than just red carpets and casting calls. Shelley Winters finally told the truth about what it was really like to live with and be friends with one of the most famous women in the world. Winters is known for being bluntly honest and daring. In talks and books she wrote later, Winters didn't hold back. Marilyn wasn't a fool. She said she played the dumb blonde because that's what Hollywood wanted her to be, which went against the Monroe image that had been around for a long time. Shelley said Marilyn was one of the smartest and most sensitive women she had ever met, despite her breathy voice and sparkling looks. In the late 1940s, Winters and Monroe shared a room together. Both were struggling actors, trying to find their place in a business that often threw women away. The only thing they had in their small rundown apartment was a hot plate and a dream they both had. "We didn't have much money, but we had ambition," she noted. She would read plays, practice lines and talk about what it meant to be an actor until late at night. Winters said Marilyn was very interested in psychology, art, and philosophy and was always reading about them. She said that people thought she was only interested in beauty and fame. That being said, She really did want to understand people. That's what made her such a great actress. It wasn't always easy for them to be friends. They were both strong-willed, sensitive, and really loved what they did. Shelley said that she and Marilyn did fight sometimes. "We were like sisters," she said. "We loved each other, but we could fight like cats." Winters thought back to how Marilyn was vulnerable and easily hurt, especially when men treated her like a plaything. She seemed weak. Shelley said, like she was made of glass. No matter how much you wanted to protect her, she was so strong that it would surprise you. Winters respected how fragile and fiery Marilyn was at the same time. He often said that Marilyn's power lay in her contradictions. Their lives took very different turns when Monroe became famous in the 1950s. Winters won 2 Academy Awards and became a well-known dramatic actor. Monroe, on the other hand, became a symbol of beauty and tragedy around the world. Even though they went in different directions, Shelley always stood up for her old friend when she was criticized. Winters said that people thought she was stupid, but Marilyn knew more than anyone else about Hollywood. It was just that she couldn't always keep herself safe from it. Shelley thought Monroe's kindness was both her best quality and her worst flaw. She put too much faith in other people. She was sad about this business. That's not safe. Winters stayed honest about the bad parts of Monroe's story over the years. She said Marilyn had talked a lot about being alone and the stress of keeping up appearances. "Shelley, I don't want to be a joke," she told me one time. "I want to be a great actress." She really meant it. That statement kept coming back to haunt Winters long after Monroe's untimely death in 1962. She said that Marilyn's sadness could be seen behind her smile even as her fame grew. She thought about how she was always alone. Even though she was surrounded by people, she was loved by Hollywood, but it also hurt her. If Shelley did finally talk about Monroe in public, it wasn't to spread rumors or promote herself. It was out of love and truth. She said, "I wanted people to know who she really was." She was the woman who practiced her lines all night, cried when people made fun of her, and hoped to be taken seriously, not the blonde beauty or the myth. Winters claimed that Marilyn's intelligence was often missed because people couldn't look past her good looks. Shelley said in a soft voice, "I think she would have become one of the best actresses of our time if she had lived longer." In the end, Shelley Winters' thoughts about Marilyn Monroe show a picture that is both sad and sweet. She remembered her as a woman of contradictions, shy but alluring, scared but driven, misread but unforgettable. In one of her last talks, Shelley said that Marilyn was real. She wasn't a dream. Of real flesh and blood, her heart broke too often. In Winters' writing, Monroe's humanity shines through the glitz and rumors that have long surrounded her. That may be the best thing Shell has ever done for her friend. A reminder that the woman behind the story just wanted to be loved and accepted for who she was. He was 85 years old when he died of heart failure at the Beverly Hills Recovery Center on January 14, 2006. In 2005, on October 14, she had a heart attack. Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, California, is where she is buried.